The storm battered Draven Prime like it meant to break through the colony dome itself. Rain came in hard, endless sheets that rattled against the glass walls of the hospital, drowning the hum of shuttles lifting from the docks. The corridors. Inside gleamed with that antiseptic brightness. Draven Prime prided itself on white walls polished like bone, floors so clean they reflected the ceiling lights like water. But Vance Core moved through them with a gait that didn't match the place. His registry inspector's jacket was neat, his tablet in hand just like any civil worker making rounds, but the way his eyes swept corners, the rhythm of his boots against the tile, spoke of someone who had spent years moving under fire. His duty on paper was simple cross-check cargo manifests for the trade registry. Ensure supplies moved through the hospital without skimming or theft. He had taken that job because it was safe, because it kept him away from the front lines and the ghosts that still pressed at the edge of sleep. Yet tonight his path hadn't come from the registry's orders. He had been reviewing shipment logs. In his quarters when he saw it, bulk sedative orders assigned to the non-viable ward, month after month, with no matching graft kits, no stem regimens, nothing but drugs meant to quiet lungs until they stopped moving. That pattern had itched in his head, too familiar. He had seen it before on battlefields, where the wounded were tagged as not worth the lift, left in trenches with a shot of morphine and a prayer they wouldn't last long. The war had burned into him one rule he couldn't shake. Statistics don't get the last word. And so he found himself walking through the hospital's upper levels on a night when the storm made security thin, following that itch toward the wing, marked non-viable. The deeper he went, the more wrong it felt. The hum of staff chatter fell away. The beeping and bustle that marked living wards gave way to silence. He passed one door after another, each sealed with a panel light that glowed green but showed no traffic inside. At the far end, a heavier door waited with a simple maglock, the kind reserved for storage rooms or maintenance closets. Nothing here matched the sterile perfection of the rest of the hospital. Dust edged the frame. No flowers, no personal effects lined the hall, only silence. He paused with his hand over the lock. The risk was real fines, suspension, maybe the end of his civilian life. He could already hear the reprimand. Inspector Core exceeded his mandate, compromised a secure wing. His jaw tightened. He had carried men out of bombardments, refusing to leave them under collapsing sky. He had carried women off field hospitals when triage tags said black, not worth the supplies. He wasn't about to let a maglock tell him to walk away, no. He keyed in an old maintenance override, fingers steady. The code was one of dozens still etched in his memory from medic days. Hospitals rarely changed what wasn't broken. The lock clicked, soft and final. Vance pushed the door open. Light struck him like a blow. The room was blindingly white, every surface scrubbed sterile, yet the emptiness was louder than sound. In the middle stood a single bed. A woman lay on it, not connected to full support, only a thin oxygen mask, a saline drip, and a sedation line dripping into her veins. Machines tracked her vitals with a rhythm so calm it felt cruel. The tag clipped to the bed rail read, Naria. Lung rot. Non-reversible. Vance's eyes swept her quickly, clinical at first, then slower. Her skin glistened faintly green under the light, iridescent like scales beneath sweat. Black hair clung damp against her temples. The ceremonial wrap around her body was thin and frayed, plastered against her chest from fever. Every breath she took shuddered, chest rising unevenly, clogged with the crystalline fibers that tore her lungs. His fingers tightened on the tablet until it creaked. They hadn't tried a graft, no stem regimen, no filtration, just sedation and waiting for her to fail. She was already written off, a number pulled from the ledger and set aside. Her eyelids twitched, then lifted. Amber eyes met his for a flicker of a second. She managed to part cracked lips. "Leave me," she whispered. Voice like glass breaking. "Not worth it." Vance crouched at her side, his shadow breaking the glare of the light. His voice came calm, clipped, the same one he used when soldiers bled out in panic, clawed their throats. "You're worth it. Breathe with me." The words left his mouth steady, but inside, the war rose like it had never left. He had come chasing. A suspicion, a set of numbers that didn't add up. Instead, he had found a life the system had already buried. And in that moment, he understood the truth. His mission wasn't inspection anymore. His mission was her. The storm outside pressed harder, rattling against the glass walls like a fist demanding entry. But inside the sealed ward, the air was unnervingly still. Vance's hand moved quick, steady, disconnecting the sedation line. With a twist of practiced fingers, the machine protested with a rising alarm, a shrill tone that seemed to scream betrayal of protocol. He silenced it with a code jabbed into the console, eyes never leaving the fragile rhythm of the woman's chest. Naria coughed weakly, the sound thin and wet, a body fighting itself. Her head turned slightly, hair sticking to her cheek as she tried to draw a deeper breath and failed. The oxygen mask fogged with each ragged exhale, more struggle than success. Vance adjusted it manually, pressing the seal tight against her skin, and spoke in the clipped, controlled tone of battlefield. "Triage. In, hold, out, with me." Her eyes flickered at the command. She tried once, failed, shuddered. He kept speaking, his voice a metronome of survival. On the second attempt, her chest rose, held, then fell with a rattling release. On the third, the rhythm began to match his own. Vance felt the small victory lodge inside him like a stake against the storm. He scanned the tray at her bedside supplies that were pitiful, almost insulting. No graft kits, no filtration discs, no stem packs. Only saline and sedation, the barest pretense of care. Whoever had ordered her placed here had never intended her to live. The door hissed behind him. Instinct surged. He rose, tablet raised. Like a shield, posture squared to fight if he had to. A nurse entered, tray in hand, her eyes widening when she saw him. For a moment, the room froze. Vance's stance hardened. He was ready to silence her if she reached for an alarm. But she didn't. She looked at him, then at the patient, and the fight drained from her shoulders. The tray clattered softly onto the counter. Her voice came flat, tired in a way that carried no surprise. "I didn't see you. Nobody checks this wing. Everyone only looks at numbers." Something small slid across the tray toward him. A sealed ampule. Her hand never stopped moving as she set down instruments, but her eyes lingered on him just long enough. "Bronchial relaxant. You'll need it." Then she turned, walked out, and the door sealed again. Vance's pulse slowed. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He picked up the ampule, cracked it open, and added it to the line. The effect was almost immediate. Naria's chest eased fractionally, her shoulders dropping against the bed. The harsh strain in her breath softened. She coughed, harder now, a painful sound that forced flecks of gray grit into the mask. Vance caught her, bracing her back with one arm, his body solid against her fragility. She felt light, too light, bones sharp. Beneath overheated skin, the wrap slipped from her shoulder, exposing the green sheen of her collarbone. Heat surged in him, an unwanted human reaction. He shoved it aside, pulled the sheet higher, and focused on what mattered. His hands stayed steady. His mind stayed cold. A medic's composure honed in war. When the coughing passed, her eyes lifted to his again, clearer now through the fog of sedation he'd cut. Her voice rasped. "You don't move like an inspector." He adjusted the mask seal, buying a second to control the edge in his tone. Old work. Her gaze lingered, probing, not just curious, but measuring him the way people do when their lives hang on the truth of someone's words. Why me? Vance tightened the mask straps and looked at her, jaw hard. Because you're breathing. She blinked, slow, weary. That's not enough. It's enough for me. The words came out sharper than he expected. A conviction. Born from too many nights on battlefields, where he had to decide who got carried, who got left. This time, he refused to let the system decide for him. Her head sank back onto the pillow, the fight in her body quiet but not gone. Her breath rattled, still fragile, but steadier than before. Vance's mind shifted into cold precision. He disconnected. Unnecessary monitors, looped the mask tubing into a portable rig he improvised from his pouch, and slid his arm under her. She weighed less than she should, heat seeping through his jacket as he lifted her. The corridor outside was empty. The storm's roar swallowed his steps as he carried her through the service door. Rain lashed down in sheets, soaking him in seconds, plastering her wrap against her body. She whimpered once, the sound muffled by the mask, but he kept his pace. Steady, not rushed. A soldier's pace. They'll charge you, she whispered faintly, voice broken against the hiss of the storm. They can send me the bill, he muttered, pushing forward through the stairwell toward the docks. Every sense sharpened shadows, cameras, the echo of boots on metal steps. But the decision was already made. He would not leave her in a room where numbers decided life. By the time he shouldered open the door to his narrow apartment, above the rusted market stalls, water dripped from his hair, his shirt clung to his back, and his arms ached from holding her steady. He laid her on the bed, set his medic's pouch on the crate that served as his table, and snapped it open. Clamps, tubing, a filtration disc disguised as a machine part. The tools of a past life he swore he had left behind. His jaw tightened as he looked at her again. Fever-slick skin, struggling, chest, amber eyes that had stopped resigning themselves to death the second he had spoken. He had taken lives in war. Tonight he would save one. The room smelled of damp rain and rusted iron from the market below, the storm's rhythm muffled now by the thick walls of his apartment. Vance hung his jacket on a nail by the door, rolled his sleeves up, and set his kit in neat lines across the crate table. Every motion was deliberate, clean, the ritual of a man who knew mistakes came from clutter. Gauze boiled in a dented kettle, tubing coiled like veins waiting for blood. The filtration disc sat at the center, its ceramic face gleaming faintly. Under the lamp's yellow light, on the narrow bed, Naria shivered, breath catching in uneven bursts against the mask. Her ceremonial wrap had soaked through in the storm, clinging translucent to her frame. He pulled the sheet up to cover her, pressing the edges firm around her shoulders, the gesture practical but layered with care. Her amber eyes followed him, still heavy with fever, but no longer vacant. You don't keep that kit for dock inspections, she rasped, voice raw but laced with quiet accusation. He didn't look up from arranging clamps. I keep what saves lives. Her gaze lingered on him, testing, as if weighing the truth of his words. He let her look. He'd learned long ago that explanations mattered less than the proof of steady hands. The door knocked soft, precise. 2 taps, a pause, 1 more. Ria's signal. Vance moved to open it just a hand's width. His neighbor stood there, a cloth bag dangling from her hand, her eyes sharp, but her smile broad enough for any listening ears. Inspector, she said loudly, that heater part you ordered came in. She pushed the bag through the gap, her voice dropping low for him alone. Soup and a lamp. Keep it wrapped till use. No one saw me. Vance met her eyes, gave a single nod, and closed the door. On the bed, Naria's expression had shifted, something between surprise and suspicion. "You have allies," she murmured. "I have neighbors," he corrected, setting the soup to warm on the heater. "Allies come after you prove yourself." Ria's lamp cast a clean beam across the room, and under it Vance leaned close, adjusted the mask, and began percussion along Naria's back. His palm tapped firm rhythms, loosening grit lodged deep in her lungs. She coughed, hard, gray flecks misting. The mask, his other arm braced her, steadying her through the spasms. He didn't flinch when fever heat bled through the sheet into his skin. When the fit eased, he held a spoonful of broth to her lips. She sipped, eyes closing briefly at the taste, then opened again with a flicker of something fierce. "You risk. Your name, your post, your life," she said, voice hoarse. "For someone you found in a locked room." "Why?" He didn't hesitate. "Because the city doesn't get the last word." Her breath caught, but not from sickness. Her gaze held him, amber steady against the lamp's glow. For the first time since he had found her, resignation cracked, replaced by something fragile but alive. "Then neither do I," she whispered. The storm outside raged on, but inside the small apartment, the battle lines had shifted. It was no longer about sedation orders or inspection codes. It was about a woman who had been written off, and a man who refused to let her die tomorrow. He knew the fight would grow sharper audits, badge numbers, consequences. But tonight, step one was clear. Keep her breathing. Keep her alive, and in that clarity, he felt something he hadn't in years. Purpose that burned steady, not like war, but like defiance. The storm had faded to a steady drizzle by dawn, but the air inside Vance's narrow apartment stayed heavy with fever heat. The small space smelled of boiled water, antiseptic, and the faint mineral tang of crystalline dust drawn from Naria's lungs overnight. The improvised filtration rig hummed low on the crate, its ceramic disc already darkening to gray. Each steady tick of the pump was another moment stolen back from the silence the hospital had assigned her. Naria lay propped against pillows, amber eyes half-lidded, but sharp enough to follow his every move. Her breath still rattled at the edges, but they came deeper now, each one measured against the count he gave. In, hold, out. His voice was a metronome, the same rhythm he had used in foxholes and triage tents when men clung to life by threads. This time, the life was hers. She tried to keep pace, faltered on the fifth cycle, coughed hard, and sagged against him. His hand braced her back, steady and patient. He didn't rush her. He never did. "Again," he said softly. "We build a lung the way you build a wall. One stone, one breath." She shot him a look, half tired, half amused. "You sound like a commander." "Not anymore," he replied. His palm pressed firm to her ribs, guiding the rhythm until she found it again. "Now I'm your field kit." She let out a faint sound, something between a laugh and a groan. But she kept breathing, and that was all that mattered. When the drill ended, he lifted the mask, checked her chest rise without it, then sealed it back in place. Her pulse beat quick under his fingers when he checked her wrist, stronger than yesterday, enough to ease the tight line in his jaw. "You cover me like a brother," she said suddenly, eyes never leaving his. "But you look at me like a man." The words landed between them with a weight heavier than the storm. He didn't deny it. He only shifted the sheet higher over her shoulders, discipline hard in his posture. "Both can be true. I control one of them." "Good." Her voice was faint but serious. Simple, serious. He busied himself at the crate, setting clamps in order, checking the next disc. His movements carried the precision of someone who needed action to ground him. She watched him quietly, eyes tracing the scar along his jaw, the calluses on his hands, the way his body moved with quiet command. "What comes after breathing drills?" she asked, her voice less ragged now. "The graft," he answered, not softening the truth. "A filter under the clavicle. Local anesthetic. Pressure, not pain, if you consent." Her eyes didn't waver. "If I say stop, you stop?" She studied him, then gave a small, decisive nod. "Then I want it." Something eased in his chest at her answer. Not relief, resolve. He laid out the boiled gauze, the wrapped scalpel, the small oval filter still sealed in brown paper. His hands moved like he was back in a field tent, setting order against chaos. Naria watched in silence, her gaze sharper than fever now. She wasn't resigned anymore. She wasn't waiting for a death someone else had chosen. She was choosing. This fight, choosing him. Outside, the drizzle tapered to quiet mist. Inside, Vance felt the clarity he'd been missing since the war. A mission simple, focused, and human. Keep her alive. Step by step, breath by breath. And as he looked at her across the narrow room, wrapped in his shirt and stubborn will, he realized he wasn't only teaching her to breathe. He was teaching her to fight again. Night pressed down on the city like a heavy hand. The storm had spent itself, leaving Draven Prime wrapped in a damp silence, broken only by the occasional hiss of shuttles along the docks. In Vance's narrow apartment, the lamp Rhea had brought cast a steady beam across the bed, its light raking clean along Naria's collarbone. Everything else was shadow. She lay back against folded towels, chest rising slow and steady under the mask. Fever had receded, though her skin still glistened faintly in the glow. The wrap was gone, replaced by his oversized work shirt that swallowed her frame, the fabric soft against skin that had been too long in hospital linen. Her amber eyes followed his every movement, steady now, no longer dulled by sedation. Vance washed his hands in water boiled until the skin on his knuckles pulled tight. He laid each tool out in a straight line on the crate table. Gauze, syringe, scalpel, forceps, suture, adhesive, the filter housing still wrapped in brown paper. He spoke without looking at her, voice as calm as the low hum of the pump. "Before we begin, you need to give me your answer clear. Yes or no. If you say stop, I stop." "Yes," she said. Her voice didn't falter. "I want the graft." He met her eyes for a long second, fixing the moment not as compliance, but as choice. Then he set to work. He swabbed her clavicle with antiseptic in widening circles until the green sheen of her skin blanched pale beneath. The sting made her twitch, but she didn't flinch. He marked a thin line just under the bone with a skin pen, his hand precise. "This is the local," he said, lifting the syringe. Sharp sting, then pressure. She nodded once. He slid the needle under her skin in a slow arc, aspirated, then pushed the anesthetic in a measured line. The tissue blanched further, numbness blooming under his touch. He tested with the back of a clamp. "Feel that?" "Pressure," she murmured. "No pain. Good." The scalpel moved clean, parting skin no longer than the width of the filter. "Seat." He breathed slow through his nose, letting his own rhythm dictate hers. His left hand steadied her shoulder. His right opened the pocket shallow and deliberate. Her fingers reached for his free hand, not in panic but presence, and he let her grip tighten around his calloused palm. The lamp flickered once. His eyes didn't leave the incision. "If the room goes dark, I keep working. The lamp holds charge." She didn't answer, only breathed, following the count he gave under his breath. In, hold, out. He unwrapped the filter, its oval face gleaming faintly. He flushed it with saline, checked the return, then slid it into the pocket seat first. Face outward, a soft click as it settled against the fascia. He anchored it with two fine sutures. careful not to let the thread pull too tight. Her breath hitched. He paused. Pain. No, strange, like something pressing from inside. Normal. He flushed again. Clear return. He closed with 3 neat stitches, dressed the site with oiled gauze, sealed the edges with adhesive. The whole field. Took less than 10 minutes, but the silence stretched it into an hour. He stepped back, peeled his gloves off, and only then allowed himself a long breath. Done. Naria exhaled slow, a sound that carried more relief than words. Smaller than I feared. Smaller is the point, he said, adjusting the pump to a lower assist. The monitor ticked. Her oxygen rose by 2 points and held. The tight ring in his chest loosened, though his face betrayed nothing but a small nod. She tilted her head, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Tell me what to do if something feels wrong. He listed each sign with crisp clarity. Burn beyond dull ache, flutter in the throat, breath catching too long. He explained the limits, no lifting her left arm above the shoulder, no showers to the chest, breathing drills every 2 hours. Each instruction landed like a drill order, but her gaze softened with each one. You don't shake, she said at last. I shake when I'm done, he answered. Her hand brushed the back of his knuckles, faint but deliberate. Then tell me when you do. He didn't reply, only reset the lamp lower, checked the dressing once more, and sat beside her with his forearms on his thighs. His face remained composed, but the smallest tremor in his exhale betrayed the truth. He had shaken already, just not in his hands. Dawn broke clean over Draven Prime, pale light pushing through the storm's retreat. The city below stirred with cranes grinding at the docks, vendors shouting to one another as shutters lifted. The hum of life returning after a night of rain. Up 3 narrow flights of rusting stairs, Vance eased open the roof door of his building and felt the chill of morning air strike his face. Behind him, Naria leaned on the rail, one hand braced. At the dressing beneath her collarbone, she wore his shirt still, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hem brushing mid-thigh. The mask and pump were gone for the first time since he had carried her out of the ward. Her breath trembled in her chest, but her amber eyes shone with something. Sharper than fever, now anticipation. You'll take it slow, Vance said, his voice clipped, the medic's calm threaded through it. 10 breaths, no more. We stop if you falter. Her lips curved faintly. Orders, Inspector? Orders, patient, he countered, though the edge softened into something closer to care. The roof stretched bare, iron rail wet with dew. Beyond it, the colony's towers rose sharp and white against thinning cloud. Vents from the textile rose, coughing smoke into the morning air. Naria stepped forward, her bare feet slapping softly on the damp concrete. She set her hands to the rail and drew in the first breath of unassisted air since she'd collapsed. Her chest expanded, steady, smooth. No catch at the end. She held, released. Her eyes blinked hard at the shock of it. 1, Vance said quietly. She nodded, took another, then a third. On the 5th, a cough hitched in her throat. She stiffened, hands tightening on the rail, panic flickering in her gaze. His hand touched the small of her back at once, grounding. Don't fight it. Control it. Breathe through. She forced the cough out and pulled air back in. Rough at first, then steadier. She looked at him, amber eyes wet not from sickness, but from relief. I thought I would never feel this again, she whispered. You will, he said, every day more. The count reached 10. She stayed upright, shoulders square, no rattle at the end of her breath. She turned her face into the wind, hair black and damp against her cheek, and for a moment she looked less like a patient and more like the woman she had been before the ward had named her nothing. Proud, alive, Vance's gaze swept the skyline. Out of habit skiffs high above, No cameras angled down. No clinic whites prowling rooftops. Safe for now. He allowed himself to stand close, shoulder brushing hers. She didn't move away. "Tell me something," she said, voice low. "Why did you really carry me out? The report, the evidence, the statistics, they're not enough to make a man risk what you did." He kept his eyes on the horizon. "Because I knew if I left you, you'd die alone in a room that had already decided you weren't worth the bed you lay on. I've seen too many die like that. It doesn't leave me." Her grip loosened on the rail. "Then I refused too," she said, and the smile that broke across her face carried no trace of pain. The wind swept around them, lifting the damp hair from her temple. 10 breaths had turned into a vow neither of them had spoken yet. Enough. For today, Vance said at last. She nodded, not in surrender, but in agreement. She let him guide her back to the stairwell, her pace steady, her weight her own. Halfway down, her foot slipped on a wet step, and she reached instinctively for him. His hand caught her hip, steadying her, and for the briefest moment the contact lingered. Her breath caught, not from weakness, but from awareness. He moved her forward without comment. His discipline unbroken, but the air between them had shifted. Back inside, she sank onto the bed with care, hand brushing the dressing as though to confirm it was real, that she had not dreamed the rooftop or the air that still filled her lungs. Her amber eyes sought his, steady, alive. "You said the city doesn't get the last word," she murmured. "What word do we choose then?" Vance met her gaze, his face as controlled as ever, but something eased in his jaw. "Choice," he said simply. She leaned back, breath slow and strong, and smiled like she believed him. The rain had gone, leaving the city washed in a pale, hard light that glared off the hospital towers across the bay. From the window of his cramped apartment, Vance watched the glow spread like a false promise white walls, clean surfaces, statistics polished until they gleamed. Behind the facade he knew lay locked rooms full of quiet deaths. His jaw worked as he tapped the final command into his tablet. The report filed with the registry went clean and sharp. Shipment numbers, badge IDs, photos of textile vents spewing unfiltered fibers into the streets. He attached dates, times, cross-checks with sedation orders. No rhetoric, no speeches. Just a chain of facts that could not be ignored without leaving a record. He signed it with his name and badge ID. No aliases, no shields. The city would know who had forced its hand. When the confirmation seal flashed across the screen, he let out a slow breath and turned toward the bed. Naria sat upright, one hand over the dressing at her collarbone, the other curled around a cooling cup of broth. Color had returned to her cheeks, faint but steady. Her amber eyes met his. "You came back," she said softly, like she was still measuring whether promises held weight. "I told you I would." She smiled faintly, not fragile but sure, and set the cup down. "Then take me to the roof again. I want to know it wasn't chance." The stairwell smelled of damp stone and rust. Vance walked one step behind her, hand hovering near her back, but never touching unless she faltered. She didn't. The oversized shirt clung to her thighs, her bare feet light against the iron steps. At the roof door, he checked the dead sensor, then pushed it open. The air hit them clean, cool, carrying salt and smoke from the bay. Naria stepped out, hands gripping the rail. She drew in a breath, deep and unassisted, and released it without pain. She laughed suddenly, the sound bright, and startled, echoing off the rooftops. "You hear that?" she asked, turning to him with wide eyes. "That's life." Vance's throat tightened in a way he hadn't expected. "Yes," he said. "That's life." They stood together, shoulders touching, while the city hummed below. For a moment, There was nothing but the sound of her breathing, clean, strong, undeniable. The moment broke with a distant chime. Vance's tablet pulsed on his hip. He pulled it out, expecting an audit summons. What flashed across the screen froze him. Public Registry Bulletin. Air quality violation under investigation. Thousands of non-viable cases linked to sedation only. Wards. The words scrolled sharp and cold. Someone had leaked his report straight into the public channel. His evidence. His name. Naria's hand closed around his arm as she read over his shoulder. Her eyes widened. Thousands, she whispered. The truth landed between them like a blow. She had not been an exception. She had been one among countless written off, locked away, sedated into silence. Vance stared at the screen, jaw hard. He had lit a fire bigger than he had intended. There would be consequences, auditors, officers, silencing attempts. He knew that as surely as he knew the scar along his jaw. But when he looked at her, alive, standing with her chin lifted against the morning air, he felt something steadier than fear. They won't be able to bury it now, he said. No. Naria replied, voice low but fierce. And they won't bury me either. For the first time since the war, Vance let his shoulders ease. He slipped the tablet back into its pouch and turned to face her fully. Her amber eyes met his, unflinching, alive. You asked what word we choose, he said. This is it. Refusal. Her hand found his, warm against the calluses. Then we refused together. The city below blazed in false brightness, but on the rooftop of a rusted building, two people stood breathing against it, a spark already set to burn through every locked door.